People don't just communicate, we interact in patterns. Every conversation is an exchange, and when we don't know how to express ourselves clearly, we sometimes start playing games. No, not Uno or Connect 4, mind games and psychological games. We all do it to some extent, sometimes without even realizing. We slip into certain roles: the victim, the fixer, or the one who always needs to be right. It can feel like it's just quote unquote who we are, but a lot of the times these roles are habits that we picked up, shaped by our experiences, our fears, and our need to feel safe or seen. Welcome back to the It Girl Playbook. In today's episode, we will be exploring the book Games People Play by Dr. Eric Berne to understand the psychology of human relationships so that you can recognize not only the games people play with you, but the ones you might be playing with yourself. Before we get into the games, it's helpful to know why they happen. According to the author, every interaction we have comes from one of these three parts of our personality. 1. The parent. This is your inner authority. It's shaped by what you were taught growing up, rules, beliefs, and expectations from parents, teachers, or caregivers. It can be nurturing and protective, or it can be critical and rigid. 2. The adult. This is the part of you that's present, rational, and grounded. It assesses the situation clearly, makes grounded decisions, and responds based on facts, not emotions or past wounds. And last but not least, the child. This is your emotional core. It's where your playfulness, your creativity, and intuition lives, but also your fears, wounds, and insecurities. This part of you shows up when you're feeling rejected, triggered, or not good enough. We all shift between these states without even realizing. Sometimes it's necessary. Different situations call for different parts of us. But other times we think we're having an adult conversation when it's really our inner child trying to feel safe, or our inner parent repeating something we were taught long ago. We don't always play emotional games on purpose. Sometimes it's the only way we've learned to connect, protect ourselves, or feel seen. But once you recognize the patterns, it becomes a lot easier to change it. And so with that said, let's take a look at some of the actual games, the patterns that people fall into when they're not speaking from their adult self. Starting with game number 1, why don't you yes but. This is one of the most common and quietly draining games that people play. On the surface, it looks like someone simply asking for advice, but no matter what suggestions you give, it gets dismissed. You say, hey, why don't you try to talk to her? Why don't you leave the job? Why don't you try it this way? And no matter what you suggest, the answer is always a variation of, yes, but that won't work. Yes, but you don't understand. Yes, but it's not that simple. The truth is, they weren't asking for a solution. They're looking to validate a belief that their problems are unsolvable, to validate their helplessness, and to stay stuck. There could be so many reasons why they do this, and sometimes it's not evil at all. Maybe being the victim is all they know. Maybe it's their way of avoiding accountability or discomfort. But that doesn't make it any less draining for the person who is constantly giving the same advice out of genuine care, only to see it get tossed aside or constantly disregarded. If someone keeps asking you for your help but never takes it, use your adult self to assess the situation. More than likely, they're just looking for someone to validate their stuckness, and if that isn't you, that's okay. Game number 2, if it weren't for you. This game is all about blame disguised as sacrifice. This person constantly points to someone or something else as the reason they're not living the life that they want, blaming others for their own inaction. It could sound something like this: if it weren't for my partner, I'd be so much further in life, or if it weren't for my kids, I'd be chasing my dream. On the surface, it sounds like frustration or venting, but the reality is that it shifts the blame of being stuck to another person and helps them avoid accountability, risk, failure, or discomfort. The real motive here is protection, specifically protecting their ego. If they blame someone else, they don't have to face their own fear, indecision, or inaction. It's easier to make someone else the obstacle than to admit that they're scared to step up or change. So they stay stuck but feel justified for being stuck. But the reality is, no one is stopping you from living your life except the story you're telling yourself about why you can't. Use your adult self to pause and reflect, is someone in your life really holding you back? Or are you afraid of what might happen if you stopped hiding behind them? And if you're on the receiving end of this game, being blamed for someone else's lack of progress, remind yourself that their choices are not your fault. Game number 3, Now I've Got You, You Son of a. This game usually starts quietly. Everything seems fine, even friendly. But then, the moment you mess up or say something wrong, the entire tone shifts. And just to be clear, we're not talking about calling someone out for violating serious boundaries, cheating, or actual harm. That's accountability. This is different. Maybe it's a forgotten text, one late reply, or a small disagreement. And suddenly, it's used as proof that you've done something wrong. You're met with an outsized reaction, called out, or blindsided by something being thrown in your face, and you're just left wondering, where did this all come from? More than likely, this person playing this game has been waiting for you to slip up. It's less about what happened and more about the opportunity to accuse, criticize, or punish. They're not really interested in any type of resolution. They want to be right and want to be able to finally say, see, I knew it. I knew it all along. Sometimes this mindset comes from deeper unhealed wounds. Belief like all men are trash, all women are the same, all my friends are out to get me, or people always leave. Regardless, it's not your responsibility to heal wounds that they don't even want to change. Use your adult self to take a step back. If someone is keeping score and waiting to catch you slipping, that's not communication. It's combat. And in real relationships, you're not waiting for the moment for someone to slip up so that you can be right and win. You need to feel safe. Game number 4, See What You Made Me Do. This game is the definition of emotional manipulation. Someone acts out, they yell, they lash out, they shut down, they self-sabotage, and instead of taking responsibility, they flip it to the very person that they just hurt. It can sound something like, I wouldn't have yelled if you hadn't ignored me. I wouldn't have cheated if you made me feel appreciated. You made me act like this. Do you see what you made me do? This is way more than just emotional immaturity. It's a manipulation tactic. Over time, it can make you really question yourself, feel guilty for someone else's choices, or start to believe you're responsible for how others treat you. But the truth is, you're not responsible for someone's inability to manage their emotions or actions. Everyone has a choice in how they respond. No one makes anyone do anything. So if you hear this line, really take a step back and let your adult self step in. Ask yourself, am I being blamed for something that isn't mine to carry? Because in healthy relationships, responsibility shouldn't be something you have to carry for two people. Game number 5, I'm only trying to help. This is the unsolicited savior. They offer help nobody asked for, then get upset or even resentful when it's not received with gratitude. This game often starts with good intentions, or at least that's how it's framed. Someone gives you unsolicited advice, criticize your choices, or inserts themselves into your business under the claim that they're just trying to help. But the truth is, it doesn't feel helpful. It feels intrusive, judgmental, or even controlling. What makes this game tricky is that it can come from people close to you, friends, partners, or even family members. And when you try to set a boundary or express that their quote unquote help isn't actually helpful, or even try to politely decline, they flip it back on you, saying that I'm only trying to help. Why are you being so sensitive? Suddenly, you're the one in the wrong for not accepting their help, shifting the focus away from their behavior, and making you feel like you're overreacting, even though your discomfort was valid. In some cases, the person playing this game might genuinely believe they're being helpful, but other times, this game is about feeling superior, staying in control, or avoiding their own stuff by fixing yours. Either way, it can leave you feeling small, incapable, or like you constantly need fixing. Use your adult self to ask, did I ask for this advice? Is this actually helping me or making me feel worse? And if you're the one doing the helping, really ask yourself, is this about them or me? Game number 6, the quote-unquote martyr, aka poor me. This is the game where someone positions themselves as the constant victim. No matter what's happening, they're always the one who's been wronged, overlooked, or mistreated. It could be about their relationships, work, family, anything and everything. There's always a story about how their life is unfair, how people don't appreciate them, or how they're always the one who gets hurt. You may hear things like, after everything I've done for you, I'm always the one who has to pick up the pieces. No one appreciates how hard I try. On the surface, it could sound like someone opening up, and in small doses, we've all felt like life was a bit unfair. But when it becomes a pattern, that's when it turns into a game that is used to gain sympathy, avoid responsibility, or manipulate others into giving them attention or support. The problem is, this behavior often pushes people away instead of bringing them closer, because it creates tension and resentment, but the martyr rarely ever sees it because they're too wrapped up in their own story of being the misunderstood hero. If you notice this pattern in someone or even in yourself, it's really time to check in with your adult self. Are you being clear about what you need or silently hoping that someone will notice? Martyrdom can come from a fear of asking directly, a need to feel in control, or a way to feel worthy. But real strength isn't about suffering quietly. It's about being honest, accountable, and giving yourself permission to ask for what you actually need. And game number 7, Kick Me. This game is a bit more subtle and often self-sabotaging. The person playing it sets themselves up to be mistreated, overlooked, or disrespected, almost like they're handing out a kick me sign and waiting for someone to follow through. It shows up as constantly putting themselves down, downplaying their worth every chance they get, or staying silent when someone crosses a line. Maybe they laugh off rude comments, let people walk all over them, or keep saying yes when they really want to say no. Psychologically, sometimes it's learned. Maybe they grew up believing they had to earn love or avoid conflicts to stay safe. So now, being mistreated feels familiar, even if it's painful. But when someone eventually does quote unquote kick them, they feel hurt, maybe even a little resentful, but validated. Like, see, people always treat me like this. The real purpose of this game isn't just to express hurt, it's to reinforce a familiar belief that they're always the one getting mistreated or taken for granted. Over time, this pattern becomes a cycle. They expect to be hurt, so they subconsciously create situations where that outcome is more likely and becomes a reality. And when it happens, they get to say, see, this always happens. If this sounds familiar, check in with your adult self. Are you shrinking to feel safe? Are you tolerating bad behavior because it feels familiar? You don't have to prove your worth by enduring pain. You're entitled to respect, especially from yourself. We covered quite a few games today, and Berne suggests that all of these games are simply just ways to avoid intimacy, protect the ego, and reinforce a person's life script like a self-fulfilling belief system formed in childhood. And most of the times, these games, they aren't always malicious or even intentional. They're habits. A lot of the time, they're unconscious, shaped by past experiences, old wounds, and a lack of better tools. But the more we play these games, the more stuck we become in the same emotional loops. Whether you found yourself on the giving or receiving end of these games, the point isn't to shame, it's to notice. Because once you see the patterns, you can choose to stop playing. You can choose to stop blaming, stop over-explaining, stop shrinking, and you can start to take responsibility for your reactions without taking someone else's emotional baggage. That's it for today. I really hope that this episode has helped you recognize a few patterns in yourself or in others, and as a result, gain a little more power over it when you do find yourselves entangled in it. That's it for today. Thank you for tuning in. I hope to see you in the next one, and in the meantime, as always, stay hot. Bye!